Hi, I'm Sam, and we're here talking today with Brandon Powers as part of the Internet of Senses. I'm super excited to have him here. I've known him for years as part of a thing we worked on with Fifth Wall Forum, which maybe we'll get a teeny bit into that later. I've just always, when I think of Brandon, I think of like dance and technology and choreography and also like social media. Like it just keeps on all of those overlap. And so whenever I get excited about any of those kinds of topics, I'm like, random message here or there. But I think that if you haven't heard of Brandon yet, you should. You might have heard of some of the stuff that he's worked on or created. Probably the one initially was Queerskins, but there was also Frankenstein AI, Duet. Now you're doing Constellation Theatrical, all these like fun names. And then recently, kind of exciting things with Lincoln Center and the Onassis ONX Studio. Many, many things to discuss. So thank you so much, Brandon, for coming and chatting with me.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So I have a lot of things that I want to get to. And then I realized when I was doing the prep for this that I don't know like your kind of origin story of like how you got into dance and then how you got into dance and tech and choreography and
Sure.
where that came from. And I love a good origin story.
Absolutely. Yes. So I am a born and raised New Yorker, and I am very much a product of public school arts education, which I love to talk about. My family always was, big supporters of the arts and was taking me and my sister to shows and everything from a young age. My sister was really into theater before me. She's slightly older. But it really kind of clicked when first the Harkness Dance School, which is based out of the 92nd Street Y here in New York, which is a really well-known, arts center. They came to my school when I was in fourth grade, and they had ballet during the day, and then they offered a few students scholarships, and they offered me one of the dance scholarships, and they were really excited about me. And I wouldn't take it. And so much so that my mom tried to like bribe me with like toys to go to dance class. And I was like, I don't want to do ballet. I want to play baseball. Like, that's what I do. Like, huh, silly. And didn't do it. But then, lucky for me, in fifth grade, the National Dance Institute also came to my school, which has a much more accessible form of dance and bringing in people, especially young boys, because we're talking about luckily a time that's very different from now in terms of accessibility for dance for young boys. And that I really fell in love with. And they also offered me to be a part of their summer program and their weekend program. I wasn't able to do that because of Hebrew school conflicts, but I was able to do their summer program, luckily. And it really just started to click from there. I actually then found myself back at the 92nd Street Y as a part of an all boys hip hop and jazz group, which toured around the city when I was in middle school, which is very silly and fun. And then in high school, I went to Fieldston in New York, and we had dance as part of the day and a lot of amazing opportunity to learn about choreography and directing, even in high school. And it kind of just kept blossoming from there. And so that's really where it happened. And I knew going into college that I wanted to be a director choreographer because of all of these opportunities. And so that's very much the kind of the theatrical journey. I was very focused simultaneously in dance and theater at once. And I had a strong opinion about not having to choose between the two and really believing in this idea of like dance theater, which young Brandon like didn't realize that that was something that had been around for a very long time. And I thought I was inventing something. And I worked on a show about Nijinsky in high school, and that kind of really inspired me. And Paul Taylor, who was kind of one of my biggest inspirations as kind of a young man, realizing that like I can do this. And that's actually what brought me to Northwestern, because that was like one of the only schools in the country where you can study theater and dance simultaneously, because usually they make you choose one or the other to get your degree. And so that's really a large reason I wanted to go there. And then the technology of it all really blossomed out of my time there. I was always really interested in technology from a just like hobby perspective. Like I played video games as a kid. I was subscribed to Nintendo Power. and was always just like paying attention to that world and obsessed with Apple keynotes and the theatrics of them. And then I kind of did a project that was a collaboration between the engineering school and the theater school at Northwestern with Google Glass. And it was kind of right when Google Glass was coming out. And we were creating these live plays where the actors would be receiving the lines in their glasses in real time. And it was all being scraped from the internet by AI. And so this is like very early AI, very early AR. And my job was to sit next to the engineer and try to find narrative within these kind of AI scraping data. And it was the really amazing moment that clicked for me where I said, oh, I, as an artist, am really great about working across discipline, A, and B, also really great at systems. And I really began to understand that that's not a normal artist superpower, or that's not an every artist superpower, that like other artist superpowers are being like very flowy and, you know, very much driven on like impulse, and they just kind of ride it out. Like that's amazing for them. That's not me. I'm on the other end where like I'm really great at understanding like if this is the rule for this, this is the rule for that. And that was already the type of theater I was making. Like my shows were very formalist and like very driven by very specific rules of the world and gestures and lights, etc. And so this work with AI and systems and engineering just made a lot of sense. And so that work blurred into immersive theater work, which I did a lot of. And then the immersive theater world and the technology world are really one and the same. And so it all just kind of came together and started working on this new work.
So you just said they're one and the same. So let's make that connection that if somebody doesn't believe necessarily that they're one and the same, what do you
Yeah.
mean?
For sure. So for starters, for me, high level, like I often describe my role as a translator. That's something I'm really good at. And I am really, strongly believe that artists, especially theater makers and dance makers, are more than just like content creators, right? We don't just make stuff that people watch, but we are facilitators and thought leaders and translators, and we're really good at bringing people together and moving people through space and breaking ideas down so that more people can understand them, right? And these are all the biggest challenges that the technology sphere is looking for right now and really, frankly, needs. And we are most equipped to help them answer those questions because that's quite literally what we go to school for, right? So, I think I try to help other theater makers and dance makers like myself understand that what we take for granted is actually a superpower to the rest of the world. And so many times people in the theater and dance world are so insular, right? And we're always hanging out with each other. So we're like, yeah, everyone I know does this, whatever. But you then talk to someone who works at Meta and they're like, oh my God, like you know how to like get someone to move their body this way. I'm like, yeah, that's like literally what I do for a living, you know? And they just think they need to invent this like crazy paradigm for that. So that doves into some of the UX, work I've done with embodiment design, which I know we might touch on, as well as the educational program I lead at a nonprofit called Musical Theater Factory. But yeah, so that's really where those connections are. And it comes down to, again, this idea of the spatial medium, right? That unlike film, which is people, typically they try to connect VR and film, right? Because it's screens, but actually the technique of a theater director or choreographer is what a VR director needs, because you're trying to move someone in space. You're trying to get them to turn around. You're trying to get them to move their body, which are things you would never do at a cinema.
And when you were just talking, I just thought of, the concept or idea like the black box theater, right?
Yeah,
Like you walk
exactly.
in and it is quite literally a black box. And you go, what do I do with this black box? Well, I can have certain people over here. I can have certain people over here. I can have actors go here, or even theoretically, like the audience move around within it. And that concept or idea of the black box is really what happens within VR. It's like we're going to pick a space and we don't know what's going to happen in that space. And that space can be huge, it can be small, it can be whatever. But now you're adding more dimension, possibilities, dimension, and interaction. But if you're trained on that like box in itself, then it's sort of easy to add the extra dimensions. Whereas if you've never even been in the box before, then you can't. I guess that to me, sort of when you just said that, it kind of made those connections for me.
Sure. Yeah. You have to know the rules to break the rules.
Exactly. But the other thing that you do, which I think is really fun, which has been for years, is you're like, you need to be on TikTok. You're like, you need to create social. And so you're not just creating things that are like, okay, we're going to take VR, we're going to take AR, we're going to take motion capture, but you're also like creating videos and explaining it to other people. Like you're even going beyond that. How did that part of what you do start?
It's just always been something that I've been fascinated with. I'm especially, in the rise of like YouTuber culture in the like early 2010s when that just became really popular and like vlogger culture. I became fascinated with these people, especially watching like Casey Neistat, every single day record vlogs and, show us his life every day for like 3 years, like that to me was an amazing piece of durational theater that just happened to be taking place on YouTube. And I was understanding and witnessing this shift of people's attention and how people want to interact with artists and other humans, and seeing that this level of interaction is where we're headed, in the future. And I found really intoxicating as well. And it's something I wanted to do. I've always wanted to share more of my own work as well. So I started to dabble in it as well. And I even then started to create this like meta play about being a vlogger, and things like that, and what it's like to like fall in love with your own image on a screen, because you have to constantly edit yourself and it's very weird. Uh,
That's kept me away from doing more things. And I think I have to get over
yeah,
it.
you have to
Get over
just
it.
get over it. And people are like, how do you do it? And I'm like, well, I've been doing it since literally 10 years. So it doesn't phase me anymore. But I think that it's just a really, really fascinating sphere. And I then, once I started to do it, I ended up actually falling into friendship with a bunch of like pretty popular vloggers in that era. And for 2 years, I was in this like New York City vlogger scene when it was like the hottest group of people in New York. But so at the end of the day, it's really been all about this connection with the audience, right? Which is still that thread to like immersive theater and interactivity, which still goes into all of this technology driven, immersive tech work. And I really believe that community is so important in the work that we do, and that we need to be building communities around our work, and that we have these tools like TikTok that are unbelievably powerful to build these massive communities around space, and that we don't need to be constrained to building community around the one room that your performance is taking place in, that it can be much larger than that, and I'm one of those people who blew up on TikTok at the beginning of COVID and very much changed my life and gave me all sorts of new opportunities. And I started doing, that's where my kind of consulting company started. And I always say that the TikTok consulting, which I've done for Broadway shows and other folks, like is the gateway drug to getting them to build like augmented reality and VR work with my clients. Is like, oh yeah, you think you were like, yeah, we're doing TikTok, but like actually like that's just step one. Like what people really want is this next level thing. And like we just need to get you there slowly. But yeah, so that's led me to continue to have more experiments in that space. And right now, I think Fortnite is and Twitch are incredibly ripe for entertainment and use by more performance artists. And so this past year, I created this new interactive theatrical Twitch stream called Theater Royale, where actors are playing a public round of Fortnite while performing plays live on Twitch. And so that all connects to everything we've been talking about, because at the end of the day, it's a game, it's interactive, it's social. And so it really feels like a coming together of so many of the different ideas that I've been playing with the last several years.
Yeah, no, I think that I mean the reason why I'd started this, I have a like avatar and virtual beings class that now I just finished up teaching the third time. I added in AI agents for fun to just ride the hype this past semester, just to like make it more difficult on myself, but it was just the ability to feel like you're connected to somebody in a different, like a gaming space or a virtual space or whatever, that it's
Yeah.
just this other kind of, maybe it's not that like third place in the sense of Starbucks when it first started, but it's like this other place, this virtual space that people connect. So I'm excited to see like where you take it, because I think that I just really admire the fact that it's not the medium necessarily, right? It's like the mediums can change, like the media
Yes.
can change. You're still like dance performance spaces, and it's like name the medium, that's okay, you can do any of them. So one of the things, and you did mention this idea, is the concept and idea of embodiment. And this is almost the flip, right? And I talk about this in my class too, a bit of if you feel like it's like presence and embodiment, they're all, kind of interconnected when it comes to virtual spaces and movement or whatever. And I just wanted to get your kind of sense and understanding of embodiment and how it connects to live performance and live capture, and hit on those different topics.
For sure. So that's, definitely one of those big things I think connects all of, my work together. And my dance background, as we heard in the origin story, like I rejected ballet, right? And I went into hip hop and jazz and classical modern and much more grounded forms, I would say. And in my early choreography career, I was known as the choreographer you hire for like plays with music or musicals where actors are playing instruments and moving at the same time, and they're like not necessarily strong dancers, quote unquote, but it's like actors who move, which was a very popular, again, early 2010s musical trope. And so that really, I think, influenced my understanding of what dance is to me. And I really believe that everyone has that inside of them. Everyone is a dancer, right? It's one of the most human things about us, right? And I love it so much because of how much we all share from it and how ritualistic it is. And so I believe that in our world, we just don't fully tap into the power of our body and how we move our body, how we hold it, as nearly as much as we should. And that really comes down to these ideas simply of just like where your weight is in your body. And things like that can really unlock a lot of emotion and feeling for folks who are less attuned to their body, right? Who are just not thinking about that every day like I am. And so I really enjoy incorporating that into all this other work, especially with technology, right? As we're entering and are already in this world where technology is becoming more and more literally attached to our bodies, inside our bodies, right? On our bodies, and influencing the way we move, but we're not necessarily taking care of the way it's doing that. We're just letting the technology itself dictate how we should move because of what the technology wants. And so I created this concept and methodology called embodiment design, which inverses that, right? And allows us to design these interactions from the inside out so that we say, okay, how do we want this person to feel doing this experience? Great. What are some gestures that will inspire that feeling from how they move, right? If we want them to feel like they're floating through space, like this magical world, like let's actually have them float their arms in a very particular way. Let's figure out the weightlessness that's in your body and then design the VR experience, for example, so that they are floating their arms in the air, right? And that naturally creates these new, memories, I call it like embodied memories, where you're now associating this experience with something you've done before in your life that where you moved your body like that, because I think that's very deeply ingrained in us and people just take that for granted. And so that's kind of how we incorporate it all together. And that applies to both designing gestures for VR. It also comes down to how to move people through space in live immersive experiences, right? Just taking care of them so they feel like they know who to follow, they know that they're safe and that they are just taken care of as humans. And that ultimately is going to help people feel more comfortable exploring these new paradigms, right? We shouldn't just like throw something on their face and be like, here you go. And then they start slashing, or like, you see all those images of people like banging their head against a wall and everyone laughing, right? It's like, to me, I'm trying to like undo these like decades of meme videos and say like, okay, like, yes, like that's terrible. We need to not let that ever happen. Like if that's happening, that's a bad design by the creators of that experience, actually. And all it does is make people never want to put a headset on, or never want to participate in any tech because it trickles down. So even though it's less embodied, I think that same mentality then trickles into people's feelings about AI right now, right? They only see the worst of it, and so they think everything's bad, So that's where really that embodiment comes in. It helps it feel, more human.
I mean, that made me think of a couple of things. One is more of like an augmented reality thing of when it was like first coming out, and I did this like art experience in AR, just like a window, magic window on my phone, and I couldn't find the exit. And I was like outside
Yeah.
with my magic window going like, where's the exit? Like, it was like, oh, clearly you can still have that feeling of being trapped even if you're looking at a magic window, which
And
was
that
odd.
creates the anxiety anyway, right? Yeah.
But now if we take that like black box concept, even though you're supposed to think outside the box in art, but whatever, you're able to see like, okay, if you have a physical box, you can move around in these kinds of ways. If you have the virtual box, you can move around in these kinds of ways. And then now it's not only just that, but it's like how the person or the different people are moving, like, and what that impact has, what that effect. You said that embodiment of movement is something that is beyond, I guess, giving the choreographic direction, and you would know the thing of like, feel this way, and they're like, okay, how do I feel this way as the dancer? Okay, I'm gonna do this, and instead now you can use digital tools to have that actually happen more naturally and happen, and have digital impact. I mean, is that right? Am I understanding it correctly?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And it comes into this, other big concept that I think is the ultimate connection of all my work, which is this idea of liveness, right? And that I really strongly believe, in everything I'm making, that there's this element of liveness, even if there isn't a literal live performer in the piece, that there is liveness because the piece is existing for you in this moment, and it's going to be different because you are here. I don't think I've really ever rarely make a thing that is not going to be different every time it happens. Like that to me is what is magical and is so exciting about this new opportunities of the technology as well, because we can create custom experiences for each person. And so oftentimes, like with the different, dance technology pieces I've made, I think of it like we're co-choreographing, me and you, right, in the headset. And like I don't have to be there, but we are creating this dance together that you're doing as it fits your body and it's affecting the whole experience. And I welcome that. And so there isn't this sense of like you're doing it wrong or you're not doing, it's like, no, like this is how your body wants to react to it. And that's going to affect the experience in some way. And then you're going to talk to your friend and you're going to have a slightly different experience. And that to me is really exciting.
Yeah, it's a little like, I was trying to parallel it to like, if you watch a dance performance, it might be a little bit different. You watch a theatrical performance, but it's almost the improv, like going to improv, and it has to change dramatically, but there's this like in between that, because you've coded it or developed it and you've live captured it, and it's like not quite one, not quite the other. It's kind of this new
Yeah, it's
play.
very much connected to, I think, my obsession as a kid with the choose your own adventure books, where they're like, turn to page 32 if you want to go in the library. I loved those books. And so it's that, but instead of people turning pages, they like literally just have to like gaze at a different object. And like now they've unlocked a whole new thing. Like it's really amazing that we can do that. It's such a powerful storytelling tool. Um, and when you take that, it's amazing. And then to add this next level of the embodiment and say, oh, besides just looking one way and I'm sitting, it's like, oh, if I walk this way or I do a certain gesture, the headset or whatever we're doing can calculate the way you're moving your body and then can give you a sentiment analysis, and thereby it gives you this new scene. Like we can literally,
Sentiment analysis. We'll have a whole other
like we can
episode.
literally do that. And like I worked on a piece that did literally do that, right? Like we can do these things now. And so that, is really exciting.
Yeah, and so I first want to talk about just like the individual person, and then we'll talk about this new thing you're developing. But is that where and how those tools overlap?
Yeah, right. Because it gives us this new opportunity to really drill down and customize for different people, depending on, what we're trying to build. And also, that's kind of where I would say where I started in, AI with like Frankenstein AI. And it was really about building these kind of worlds and interactions with people that were extremely unique and help people to further understand AI. And I think I'm still in this moment right now trying to help people just understand what's happening to the world and really trying to help people realize that like the it's not an exaggeration to say that like the entire world is changing in the next 5 years. Like this is the industrial revolution, but like on drugs times 100. Like, and we're even the most bullish person is not prepared for what's happening
Well,
right
no,
now.
like just a couple days ago, and I said hopefully this like I'm part of this like convergence report from the World Economic Forum, which was kind of saying like it's not just AI, it's not just this, it's like everything is advancing all at the same time, and there's no way you can keep up on all of it all at once. Like it's just
Yeah, and there's
overwhelming for even the most knowledgeable.
very much so. Yeah, I'm very overwhelmed by it. I think, a lot of people in this like future looking immersive technology space were like, oh, everything will move fast once we have better battery life, or like once we have better screen technology. And we're all realizing together, like, oh no, the unlocking technology is AI, which a lot of people weren't really saying. Everyone just kept being like, oh, once it's a slim film factor on your face, everyone will like it. But it's like, no, everyone's going to like this stuff because you can talk to it and it makes you feel good, which like makes a lot more sense from a human behavioral standpoint. But yeah, so that's very much where that comes in. And of course, there's other parts of it in my experiments with, image generation and the kind of uncanniness of that, or how we can interact with
That
the
I
technology. And
Absolutely. Let's
yeah,
let's talk that uncanniness of image capture. Like if you have thoughts on that, because I would imagine that in and of itself, I mean, I think it that makes people sometimes go, I'm not going to try this or I'm not going to be interested in it. In the same way that people with VR were like, it gets me sick. And it's like, well, then you didn't try a good VR. That the uncanniness
yeah.
of avatars or of movement or whatever that are like, I don't like that. And it was like, well, you're kind of missing the point of it because we're not there yet. This is like the sketch. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's kind of where you were going with it.
Yeah, I think ultimately, my thesis when it comes to these ideas in AI is that I really believe that artists are entering a time where we're going to be more important than we have been in like hundreds of years, genuinely. That we are the people who are going to make meaning out of this crazy world that we're entering into. And we are going to help people understand this transition and help people. And this is where it comes down to this idea of artists as facilitators, right? And translators more than just makers, that there's people pumping out the AI slop, right? But like those people like aren't capital A artists, and this is like I have to tread carefully here to not like gatekeep artistry, because part of the vision of AI in this world is like everyone's an artist now, which I think is great. But I think there's just a big miscommunication, because of the people who are the loudest are the crypto bros with their hands on this thing, and they actually don't know how to wield it very well. But if you were to hand it over to someone who understands storytelling a little bit more and understands aesthetics a little bit more, they create immensely creative new types of art, right? That aren't just reproductions of a film, right? And so people are aping films they like because they just like to watch movies, but they're not a filmmaker. And so people are like, oh, who cares? This is cold. And I'm like, I agree. It is kind of cold, but what's magical here is the fact that we can do this. And we need to discuss how we want to do this, who should be allowed to do this, how we should be allowed to do this, all the regulations, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm, strongly a proponent of lots of regulation around AI, but I'm also a strong proponent of people digging in and playing with it, and understanding what's possible. And that, similar to, again, the crypto idea of like, we were just seeing the NFTs and everyone's like, crypto is dumb because like, who wants a fake JPEG? And I'm like, well, yes, that is a bad use case, but crypto as a concept is immensely a world-changing thing. And once Fortnite connects it to the blockchain and like all the things you've bought in the Fortnite store are transferred across universes and across your devices because of crypto, you're going to think it's awesome, right? It's just like no one's talking to you about that yet, but that's where we're going, you know? So it's just, you know, what we see versus where we're going, I think is really important. And so I'm really just trying to help people dig through the weeds of it. And if people are against it, that's great too. And I think we need those people and we need those advocates because we need to have a complicated, nuanced discussion, but we need to make sure that people who are against it also understand the context of the world we're living in and are not just like, oh, I hate it, but I've never used it before. You know, that's something that I don't love.
I think that for me, I've always, I always am, I guess it's like to be next to the creators, next to the artists, next to the I mean, in the case of within tech, next to the developers. I just feel like that ability to imagine and play and experiment is so needed. And then the people that can do super original, impactful things are particularly, special. And it might be that old thing of like, just because you can write a book doesn't mean you should, like, or whatever it is. Like people can write words and they can write articles and they can chat GPT, whatever, but it doesn't mean that it's original. It doesn't mean that it's unique. It doesn't mean that it's impactful. And it's like, how do you know it's art, not art kind of debate is, I think it's happening again in a different way. And it does, it is that the feeling or the learnings or the something you get out of it. And if you go kind of like then it's not, in my untrained definition, to me it's not art. If you go like you could hate it, you could love it, you could whatever, but it has that reaction. So to like switch gears a little bit, but I do think that you are willing to experiment, you are willing to try new things, you are willing to help people understand new technologies, new mediums, and then you have this like super interesting thing happening now that I think you're probably still, a lot of it is top secret, that you developed coming out of this. And it just, the concept or idea of it to me gets me like thinking and exciting. So I don't know how much you can share, are you willing to share about what you've been working on recently?
I can talk high level so that the lawyers don't get too mad. So this past year, I was a part of the Lincoln Center Collider Fellowship, which is a new performance and technology residency program, which there were 6 of us fellows who got a lot of amazing opportunity to interact with Lincoln Center and have resource to create our own work and share it with the institution and the city at large. And part of the goal of that experience for me was to get more comfortable with motion capture tools on my own, because I always had a certain level of knowledge and always needed someone to come into the studio with me to facilitate it. And I wanted to just get a lot better at Unreal Engine, which is like one of the game engines, if you're unfamiliar, which is where kind of the field is moving away from Unity, which is another one, which I had more familiarity with. And so as we were starting to do these lessons, me and my collaborator, Whit Sellers, who's an amazing creative technologist, we started to kind of dream of this vision of how I could essentially create a dance studio inside Unreal Engine that allowed me to create or do pre-production, as it's called in the theater and dance world, which is when a director or choreographer figures out what the heck is going to happen in the dance, etc., on stage before they go into the room for actual rehearsal, right? Rehearsal, sometimes it's created in rehearsal, and sometimes you have to work with the dancer ahead of time to figure out what you want so that when you show up to rehearsal, time is money, you're ready to teach it to more people, right? And as we were dabbling, I wanted to really create something that allowed me to have more productive pre-production and create larger scale dances, because that's something as an independent choreographer I don't really have access to, right? Because I don't have my own dance company, and I've always wanted to make more work with 10 people more, right? And that's really hard and very expensive, because working with that many people for 3 weeks, is several $1,000s. So we created this new tool that's built inside Unreal Engine that allows me to do exactly all these things. And we use motion capture to pre-record segments of dance material and then can assign it instantly to different like avatars essentially and watch it back like we're kind of puppeting a full dance company. And that we also have a mixed reality mode that allows us to imagine that we're in the dance studio with this full company and the live dancer, so they all look like they're together in the dance studio, even though you only called one of them to rehearsal. And we very quickly, after sharing it with some people, got amazingly positive feedback. We are working hard to turn it into a product that we're going to release hopefully this year. And we just want to get it out to more people and share it, because we really think it democratizes the choreographic process and allows people, essentially to do something that you would need to hire a very accomplished Unreal Engine engineer, like hundreds of dollars an hour to sit with you and do, which one is expensive, and two, you don't know the 10 people in New York that do that, probably if you work at a dance company.
We probably do, but
Like I do, right? I know all those people and they're all really busy. Like literally the person who I used to work with, like she now does the mocap for Nickelodeon, and like it's like that's who gets the jobs. It's a very in-demand skill. We've now turned that skill into an automated process that anyone who's never even opened Unreal Engine can do with 2 clicks of a button. And like that's not an exaggeration. It's
and
that
not in a to get rid of those 10 people's jobs way,
no,
but instead go, those people can do the very, very specific, kind of work, but
exactly. And that's the
the
same,
basic
it's the same
stuff.
question when it comes to AI, right? It's like I actually think, in my opinion, we're inventing jobs with this platform, because
Yeah.
now all these dancers, for example, I did this showcase at Lincoln Center and I did a dance with like 7 dancers. Those 7 dancers got paid by me to do that show well, to work for 2, 3 days. That dance would have never happened if I didn't have this tool, right? So actually, they've been paid, because I would have never paid them 3 weeks because I don't have that much money. I have
Right.
$2,500, but I don't have $25,000, right?
I mean, I love it if we take the my pretend black box thing, of which I came up with live in our conversation. But if you go like, first we had black box, then you go like, okay, dancers can move within it, or theatrical can move within it. Then you're like, okay, how can your embodiment of like movement change the thing? And then now I think of, you bring a company of dancers to perform in that black box, and instead of you walking around saying, and then I want you to do this, and then I want you to do this, and then this next, and then this, and they're kind of like, I kind of get it, maybe. That instead, prior to going into that box set, you have prepped it. That you're like, now I can show you kind of what I mean and what it all will look like together in a way that wouldn't have been possible. I mean, you could tell me how many years ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, wouldn't have been possible, but is
Yeah.
now potentially possible.
Yeah, and if it was, it would have taken an immense amount of time where it's not worth doing, right? So we're kind of trying to hit this horizon of like, how much time is it worth investing in the pre thing so that it makes the post thing faster, right? Which has been a big part of the development
Right.
process. But yeah, I walked into that rehearsal and I showed the full dance to the company of dancers, though I had never met any of them before, and I worked only with one dancer, but I was able to show them a full company's piece. And then we were able to learn the entire like 4 minute of choreography in 4 hours, and with people I've never met before, which would have never happened without the tool.
Right. And then so that it allows you to sort of expand your abilities instead of going, oh, like, okay, you didn't quite get it. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's
that
not
was
what
the
I
first
meant.
draft, whatever. It's the first draft. I'll get over it. It's like, no, I've already made the first draft. Now with the humans in the room, a lot of it changed, right? Because it was like, oh, this avatar can jump across the room and fall to the floor much faster than you can, Jeremy, but like
Like,
that's
oops.
because you're a person. So it's like, oh, then Jeremy's like, oh, well, I could do this really cool transition. And I'm like, amazing. We would have never done that if I was not with you in the room, right? So it's uplifting the joy and importance of co-creating with humans while accelerating and empowering the independent choreographer to do what they need to do so they can be more agile. And then, as you said, pitch to other people. It's similar to, or I think it's a cousin to the work that Agile Lens is doing, our friend.
Right.
And they're working on a tool that I hope to combine with our tool one day because they're doing this really cool script tool for plays. And, for their work, right, they pre-viz theaters and people can sit in all the different seats in the theater before they build the theater. It's the same idea, right? So instead of it for set design or for architects, now there's the dance element.
But it's the people moving within it, which I think is very, like, people used to say, like, when I first started teaching, and initially was like teaching about AR and VR and metaverse or whatever, and then I was like, I want to teach about avatars and virtual beings, and people were like, I don't get the connection. Where's the connection? And I was like, well, if you're in the space, who are you interacting with? You're interacting with the avatar, you're interacting with an like AI virtual being, and that's what I want to understand. And it feels to me like the architecture and design is figuring out what does the space look like? What does the space look like? And what you're creating is what is the movement? How can you now create movement within? So I think you're kind of the yin and the yang of of experiences, and it doesn't have to be necessarily dance that this would apply to. I'm really excited for you because I'm like, this is awesome. Like this is, you know, I knew him when.
I appreciate it.
I
Yeah,
knew
no,
him on during COVID having conversations with lots of random people doing a virtual theater festival.
yes, and we're hopeful. Yeah, we hope that we can build it out. If anyone watching this is interested in it, please reach out. And we do foresee it growing beyond just the dance industry. One of the earliest people who got really excited about it, and we showed it to, like, works on the like Olympic committee, and was
Yeah,
like,
it's movement in
and
space.
was like, oh, if we could previs the entire opening ceremony with this. And I'm like, you could, yeah.
Exactly.
So
This is
like
where
like
I
the
get.
Super Bowl or the Super Bowl halftime show, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
the perfect use case for this.
thank you, Brandon, so much for coming and chatting with me about this and about your work. And if people want to reach out to you, learn more about what you're working on, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So you could check out my website, which is brandon-powers.com. There's a way to contact me there. On Instagram, which is bpow33. I do want to plug one big thing. Like I vaguely mentioned, I lead a extended reality musical theater development program at a organization called Musical Theater Factory here in New York City, which is a nonprofit committed to the future of musical theater and reimagining who and how we make stories with music. And we were really excited to be the premier XR program in the country for this sort of work. And we have programming all year round. So that's the evergreen part of it. So please reach out about that if you're interested, or stay tuned for events. But the less evergreen part is that coming up here at the end of June, on June 26th, we are hosting our pinnacle event, which is called the MTFxR Garage Summit, which is the final day event of a week-long hackathon where 3 teams of professional artists and technologists and students are coming together to create new prototypes of extended reality musical theater work. It's going to be really fantastic. And so on this final day, you get to come see the prototypes and participate in amazing industry conversations that get into the nitty-gritty of like how we actually produce this work, what it's all about, and how we can kind of build this culture and industry together. And those tickets are super affordable. It's going to be at NYU's amazing Media Commons space in downtown Brooklyn, which is like a crazy state-of-the-art facility. So I'm really excited for what's going to get created. So we hope to see you there, or to see you at a future MTFxR program.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you.